Hello, Leon. It's your Zayde, Mason. I'm here today to read to you the next set of letters from the ABCs of engineering. So, I think without further ado, let us begin. All right, so we left off on dielectrics last time, so we are going to continue on for E. E is for electricity, and you will see electricity everywhere. You've already seen it in your house, you've seen it in cars, you've seen it in museums or wherever your parents have taken you. If you have light bulbs, or if you're watching this video, that means that you have electricity. So electricity is a convenient way to transfer energy. The amount of flowing electrons that are moving around is called a current, similar to water when the electrons flow from the positive side to the negative side, and they move from one end to the other of a battery or something that's generating current. The change in potential, how fast they're moving, or the voltage is what it's really called, tells us how much voltage is flowing at a given time. Not flowing, but well, we can continue on with this. When something gets in the way of electrons, it's called resistance. So here in this, we have a circuit, so we have a battery, and the battery has positive and negative ends, and this is called a switch. So when you throw this is like a switch in your house or the key turning on your car, but this switch, when it touches, the electrons can flow from the positive end of the battery to the negative end of the battery. And look, in this case, there's a light bulb. So when you flip the switch, the electrons can travel from one end of the battery through the circuit, through the light bulb, to the other end of the battery. And that is how electricity works. We'll talk about that more later. We've talked a lot about it a little bit before in some of the other books. The letter F. F is for force. And we talked about forces with Newtonian mechanics and astrophysics for babies. But in this case, we've got the pink is for push. This is a bridge. And the purple is for pull. So in this case, we're talking about force as it deals with a bridge, where some of it is pulling and some of it is pushing based on weight and the Earth's normal force pushing back. Gravity pulls on this bridge, but tension on the cables keeps the bridge standing strong. So that's how bridges work. There are only four fundamental forces in nature. Force, and there's all kinds of forces. Four fundamental ones that we talk about normally. There's actually a few more, but we'll keep to just these. There's the strong nuclear force, and then there's electromagnetic force, and the weak nuclear force, which we'll get into in another day. And then there's finally gravity, which is the weakest of all forces, yet the one that you notice the most often because it pulls you towards the ground. And we talked about this before. All of these forces build up to make effective forces that are easy to see, such as friction, tension, shear, and torsion. So like when a wheel goes around, that's a type of force, but we'll talk about that again another day. We've talked about net forces before, where you have a net force. If the net force equals 0, something doesn't move. When you're sitting on the ground and you're not falling through the floor, that's because the ground is pushing up as much as you as you are on the ground. That's a force. Net force is 0. Ooh, G. G is for gear. Look at that. It's a transfer of energy from one gear to another. A gear is a mechanical part that transfers force, which we just talked about. So this is transferring force from one gear to another. Gears come in many shapes and sizes, and we've been using gears in humanity for a very, very long time. They usually have little bumps all around the edges called teeth. Yeah, those are the teeth of the gears. And the teeth on multiple gears have to match up to transfer force from one gear to another. So when this gear turns, the other gear has to turn because it's pulling it with the chain. Bikes have gears of different sizes to help make them go faster, make it easier to go up a hill. And when you transfer energy from one to the other, you can actually make the force less hard for the user. And we use transfer of forces in all different cases. And there's actually ways to use gears, believe it or not just for transfers of forces, which they always will do if they're working between pairs or more than one set, but we also have used them in the past to make computers. That's right. We've talked perhaps, or maybe we haven't talked about Lady Ada Lovelace and the difference engine. So we'll talk about that. But the difference engine was a big giant computer that used gears to move that helped it calculate by the change of ratio of gears from one to another. And that's how the first calculators worked. Anyway, so that's G is for gears. H is for hydraulics. And I think this will be the last one of the day. So H is for hydraulics, and see how we push down a little bit on a fluid on this side and there's a force going up on the other side in the other tank. A hydraulic machine transfers force, again forces, using liquid. And you find this in brakes and cars and all sorts of other places. When forces push liquid into a container at one end, pushing down, the liquid will push on the other end of the container. If you push the liquid on the thinner tube down a long distance, so if you push this down, then you can lift the heavy object. So this has more weight, more mass than this does, but just by pushing down on the long tube, it transfers it and pushes up on the heavier weight. You can lift a heavy object in the wider tube up a short distance. That's called a mechanical advantage. Well, so that is just today. So we've talked about electricity, and we've talked about forces, and we've talked about gears, which transfer forces, and we talked about hydraulics, which also transfer forces. So that is E, F, G, and H, and that is all we're going to cover today. I love you very much, Leon. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will continue on with this book soon. This is your Zayde Mason signing out for today.